Hi, it's Larry Gaines, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to draw the correct and precise trend lines. Once you are able to learn this particular method, then you can use trend lines to, as a system. You can use it to create breakout systems and spot a lot of different types of trades that you otherwise would not be able to identify. But the key is to draw a trend line the same way every time. So that's what I'm going to go through today and show you several different examples and how to draw a precise, correct trend line. Now, it's very commonplace for different analysts or people to draw different trend lines representing the same data during the same time period. And individuals on different occasions will also draw two totally different trend lines based on the technical information, depending on his inclination each time. So consistency and uniformity are totally lacking. Not all trend lines can be correct, and there's only one way that really is correct. And this is a process that I've learned through a couple of different people that draw trend lines, and I think it really makes sense, and it's helped me a lot. So I'll first explain to you the precise setup for this. So, we're accustomed to reviewing historical price activity of a market from past to present, with the dates reading from left to right on your chart. And as a result, the demand and supply lines are drawn and extended from the left side of the chart to the right. This is incorrect. Recent price activity is far more significant than historical movement. So, in other words, precision and accuracy demand that the lines be extended from right to left, with the most recent date appearing at the right side of the chart. So, rather than draw your trend lines from left to right, from past history, historic price, to recent historic price, you want to draw your trend lines from most recent history or trend price to past price. So after you understand that, then the next step is to learn a way to draw these trend lines that you use the same method over and over and over. So this method requires that you go to the most recent point, and here would be a pivot high. You want to take the pivot high for extending a trend line, a descending trend line here in this example. So you take the pivot high, which just means that this high is higher than the prior day high or the day after. So that creates what we call a pivot high. Then you look for the next pivot high, which would be right here. And this one has to be higher than this current pivot high in order to, start drawing a trend line. So right here is your first pivot high, most recent price history. Then we go to the next price history, which is right here, and this is a pivot high. It's higher than the prior day, and it's higher than the day after. So we draw from right to left, and then this becomes our trend line. So let me put that in. So I take this pivot high right here. I get my drawing tool, click on there, extend it to that pivot high right there, and then you just start extending the trend line. So now let's see what happens here. So this is on crude oil. This is on the September crude oil contract futures. So you extend this trend line, extend this trend line, extend this trend line, extend this trend line, and then you can see you have a breakout. So there you go. Now you've got the market breaking out on crude oil. So that's one example. So taking it from most recent price, this pivot high, that's where we started, to that pivot high, and then as time moves forward, you can see how it just perfectly lines up, and now you have a break. So that's one example using just crude oil. Now here's John Deere, or DE. This is a daily chart of Deere. So for this one, you want to start with the most recent pivot high, which would be right here, and take it to the next, which would be right there. So that's where you draw your trend line. So let's do that. So this pivot high here, this pivot high there. Now you've got a trend line to work with for potential future breakout. And if you want to draw one on the bottom, you would take this pivot low and you would take this pivot low. This one's lower than that, but you want to take most recent price, so we'll draw one there. Okay, so we're going to take this pivot low here. Going to extend it to this pivot low. Well, let's see here. Now, extend this out. And now you've got a ascending trend line here. So you can see this particular price on Deere is starting to funnel in, creating a pennant formation. So this is going to tell you that this particular stock is going to, as this price movement gets narrower and narrower, it's going to either break to the upside on some pretty big high volatility or to the downside. So these are patterns that you want to be aware of here. Now, let's say, for example, if the next day opens up and you have a trend line where you have the low of the day right here, then you would create a new trend line. So you would take this as the pivot low. If you have the next day here, the low higher, and then start drawing your trend line there. So you can see it's starting to maybe even create that more narrower formation, showing you that in the very near future this price is going to break out either up or down. Now if you want to take a longer term perspective and draw a longer term trend line, go to a weekly chart or a monthly. So we were using a daily, so now I'll use a weekly, and I'll use that for Deere, and you can see a longer term picture of this. So here's the weekly, here's your pivot high, and your next pivot high is right here. So on a weekly you'd be drawing your trend line here. So let's do that. So most recent pivot high on the weekly to the past pivot high right there, extend it down. So here's a longer term trend line. Now let's do one on the an ascending trend line. So we'll take this pivot low, and then the next pivot low will be right here. So this pivot low here to this pivot low. Now extend the line. And now you can really see here on a longer term perspective, this thing is narrowing in. So it's telling you here this thing is either going to break hard to the down or hard to the up. So this gives you a good trade setup here starting to form. So I'm watching this, I'm putting this on my watch list as either a potential breakout to the upside or breakout to the downside. So that's the simplicity of it. If you keep it the same each and every time, then you can use this as a mechanical system to actually trade with. So I hope you got a lot from this video, and stay tuned for future educational videos, and make sure that you tune in to Options on the Open, and we'll talk to you next time, and have a great day.